Good afternoon and welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show is what we call it every single day, even though some days, well, maybe it's not the biggest show. I don't know. At the end of the day, we always like to talk about what's going on in the world of sports. And that to me is always usually centered around the Steelers these days. Here's one thing. Okay, let's go deep into what I would call the conspiracy theory box. Okay, here's the conspiracy theory box. Mark Cavalli, who covers the Steelers for the Pat McAfee show, was tweeting today about how, the Steelers know what's going to go on with Aaron Rodgers. The fact that the Steelers understand where he's at, they're not questioning it, and all that other good stuff. And basically, he made it pretty clear that anybody who's questioning that doesn't really seem to understand the situation. And so to me, I look at that and I basically say, well, he does work for the Pat McAfee show. The Pat McAfee show is in town, Wednesday? So if the Pat McAfee show's in on Wednesday and somebody that works for Pat McAfee is saying basically that everybody knows or that the Steelers know what's happening, I mean, could we say that that is actually the conspiracy that we go with? Why not? I would. I do. I always say that. To me, it's like one of those things where, you sort of read between the lines. Now, is it true? I don't know. But I think that sometimes, the information that's out there is out there and really you don't really have to look for it that hard. And so I think it's Wednesday. Maybe it's Tuesday. I thought it was the 9th. What's the 9th? If that's Wednesday, look at the 9th, right? That's the day that maybe we will find out whatever's going on with Aaron Rodgers. But I do find it amazing. You do say, okay, well, we're looking at, conspiracies and all the other good stuff. And guess what? If you think about it that way, at the end of the day, that's where I would go. That's how I would go. And I think that I've been correct from the standpoint of I've been correct in saying that I think he's coming. I think he's just trying to, take his time and make his announcement the way he wants to make it. And, there's some people that are all worked up. I was talking to somebody the other day who was going on, and who does he think he is? I'm like, a lot of these athletes like to do this stuff. I actually have a lot more respect for a guy like Aaron Rodgers or LeBron James or whoever, Think about this. Let's go this way. Say it is that he wants to make a grand announcement, okay? And we've had athletes do that, right? I mean, LeBron James is one. I mean, we've seen this before where athletes want to, people are waiting weeks and weeks and weeks, and then they want to make their announcement. Okay? Let's think about it this way. At least these guys have accomplished something. At least these guys have actually done something that we care, that we should care what they want to do. Aaron Rodgers, I get it. Some people think he's a goofball, all the stuff about his vaccine stuff, all the stuff about his natural meditation or meditation and all that other stuff. All that stuff, right? I get it. I really do. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a situation of where you're trying to sign a guy who's a Hall of Famer, who's won a Super Bowl, who's broken multiple records, who's won a bunch of games, who's taken the team deep into the playoffs many times, whatever. It's the same thing with LeBron James. When he made his announcement, he was obviously one of the top guys, on the planet, and had proven that at that point. But people that the same people that are angry and upset, or many of the same, I should not, maybe even some of the same, right? They live or die to hear a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old, not 18 usually now, 17, 16-year-old, sit at a table with a bunch of hats to tell what college he's going to go to. And we do the same thing, well, you know what? I'm going to announce my decision on September 21st. Oh, well, we're going to have to wait till September 21st to find out where you're going because you've accomplished so much in this world that we should all hold our breath waiting for you. I have a lot more problem with that than I do with a Hall of Famer who's saying, you know what? I'm going to take my time. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. That's what I would tell you. I'm not that upset about. Because again, I think, when people have to have perspective, and the perspective that I have is basically this. He's a guy who has accomplished enough in his career that we should be willing and able and ready to meet with him. To wait for him. And if you're the Steelers, I don't even think you're waiting for him. That's the other thing. I don't think the Steelers are waiting for him. I just don't. I think they know. And I think since they know, they're in a pretty good spot. And now it's a matter of, getting ready for the draft coming up in a couple of weeks and trying to figure out what it is that they want to do with their pick. That's what I would tell you. And so I just think it's always got to be important to know that you really have to, go way out of your way. You really have to go way out of your way to be angry about all of this. I mean, then in all sincerity, in order to be angry about all of this, you really have to go out of your way. Because again, we wait for all kinds of things all the time. We wait for all kinds of things. Most, notably, I think we wait for, high school kids to tell us where they're going to play college, football or basketball, as if this really matters, especially since when you consider all of the hype and hoopla and everything else, right, that is placed with respect to these kids, how many of them turn out? Guys that have at least accomplished something, I'll listen to. Honestly. I'll listen to Aaron Rodgers because he's accomplished something. Some of these other guys haven't. They really haven't. And so it gets to the point with me where, I think that if I read between the lines and read between the tea leaves and all the other good stuff, well, to be honest, I think it's going to happen Wednesday and everyone will be happy. Nobody will be upset. Everybody will be happy, right? That's my prediction. Now, will it come true? I don't know. Will it come true? I don't know. But it is going to be it's going to be real interesting, when it happens, how it happens, and how it's actually received once it does happen. That's all I'll tell you. Now, there was some interesting news that came out today that I thought, was worth talking about. And that is that Jalen Milroe was actually asked to basically come to the draft. And I think when you look at it from that standpoint, right, Jalen Milroe being asked to come to the draft, that's not a guarantee. That's not a guarantee that he's going to be drafted in the first round, but it does seem to suggest, okay, that at least somewhere on some level, they believe that he's going to be drafted in the first round. Now, to me, for the Steelers, I look at the Steelers and I say, if they draft Jalen Milroe in the first round, I don't know what to tell them. I don't know that there is a single guy. I don't know that there's a single guy, honestly, that I would tell you. I don't know that there's put it this way. I don't know that there's another name on the list that I've heard thrown around by the Steelers. Okay, not another name that's been associated with the Steelers that I would want them not to come, I wouldn't want them not to draft than Jalen Milroe. No interest in him. No interest in him coming here. I've seen nothing. At the end of the day, look, at some point, don't you have to really produce at a high level and consistently enough in college before we start to say, yeah, I'm going to give you a first round choice. I'm going to take a first round draft choice and give it to you. I mean, I would honestly say this. I look at a guy like Kenny Pickett. Even I know he's very popular here, and people loved him. And I'm obviously a big fan of him. I mean, I loved watching him play. I loved watching him play college basketball. All that kind of stuff. It's really good stuff. But at the end of the day, you know what? He had 1 year where he played at a really high level. And I thought he was probably more of a product of the system he was playing in than anything else. That's honestly what I believe. I thought that, and what I mean by that is I thought that it was the perfect storm of a team that, had a really good offensive line and some really big time receivers, and they had a pretty good running game. And of course, he was in his 5th year of playing. So he was a mature guy. When I watched him play, I just kind of felt like, wow. I really felt like this is kind of one of those things where you really have to look at his entire career and say, is he really going to be a first-round pick that's going to be able to play at a level high enough for that? That's what I would tell you. My thoughts were. I get really nervous when a guy only has one really good year. I mean, I felt like Kenny Pickett did have a place in the NFL and does have a place in the NFL. I expect him to be in the league for a long, long time. But I'm just sort of surprised, so to speak. So I'm just sort of surprised that the Steelers or anybody else are so in love with Jalen Milroe. I mean, it's got to be his skill set, because his film doesn't do a lot for me. And I know everybody wants these guys that have a little bit of mobility and all that other good stuff. I understand that. But, man, I just don't think when I watched Alabama play, he's someone that I would say, yeah, man, I think he's got a chance. He's got a chance to really be something special. I just don't think he does. I just don't think he does. And so it feels like to me, it's going to be really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. It's going to be to see if Jalen Milroe actually does get drafted in the first round. And if that happens, okay, it probably means that this Jaxson Dart is going to have a chance to move up on the list too. Because again, you know how drafts go. If there's a run on a player, then all of a sudden, on a position, then all of a sudden, some of the other guys get elevated to a level higher than maybe they should be. So I'm just not really at a place where I'm all that excited about Jalen Milroe. Maybe I should be. Maybe I should be more excited than I am. I know the Steelers like him. It just doesn't feel like that is really, a guy who's going to take them where they need to go. And again, if he gets drafted higher, if he gets pulled up, you know what? I really think that if he gets pulled up to a higher place, it's going to move a guy like Jaxson Dart up too. I just feel like that's going to be the case. And if that's the case, I think there's going to be some teams with buyer's remorse. I don't think this is the year to go get a quarterback. Just don't. I wish it was. I wish it was for the Steelers' sake, but I'm not in love with any of these guys. None of them. Not in love with any of them. And I think that's the thing, that's the key where it comes to me, it comes down to, you know what? We have a situation where, the Steelers need to go draft a defensive lineman and be happy with that because that's where they really need somebody. The game's always on Archie's. Get down to Archie's. Archie's on Carson Street, home of 80-cent wings, Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. Get down to Archie's. Enjoy your time. If you're going to watch the national championship game, stop down at Archie's. I'll be there a little bit later. And, of course, we will watch the game and enjoy Houston versus Florida. The Houston game against Duke was one of the most, I would say it's one of the bigger choke jobs I've seen. I know there's a lot of people that don't like that word. Athletes don't like that word. People don't like that word. But reality is Duke had a game won and they lost it because they couldn't figure out how to settle down, regain their poise, make enough winning plays to win the game. Period. That's what it comes down to. And again, as I've said the other day, I really think that Jon Scheyer, who, by all accounts is a really good coach, I really think that Jon Scheyer probably didn't have his best day that day either. And the reason I say that is because I think if you look at Jon Scheyer and what he did when it was getting down the stretch, when it was coming down the stretch, I think what happened was he kind of froze up. His team needed him. They needed him. Call a few timeouts, drop a couple of plays, do the best they could do to, maybe go and come up with the best play they have in their playbook. All of those things. That's what you need. That's what you need. And when you go 10 minutes and you score one field goal, that's never good. Ever. So I think it's I think that it's one of those things where it's important to note always that players play, players execute, players have to make plays. And while it's mostly on players, sometimes coaches have to help players out. Sometimes they have to help players out. Period. And they didn't. And I don't think that Jon Scheyer did in the last 10 minutes of the game. And he said as much after the game. But this is another thing of where all of these people that say there's no such thing as the clutch gene or whatever you want to call that, there's no such thing as the clutch gene, all that stuff, guess what? There is. And guys that have it or guys that can handle pressure, that's really where it's at. Period. And I think that's the case. Many people don't seem to understand that. And so we are doing good in terms of all of these things. At any rate, it's Duke against Houston tonight. It's Florida against Houston tonight. Should be a good game. Those of you who are old school who really love old school basketball and, defensive and locking it down and playing really, deliberate and half court and all that other good stuff, guess what? You're going to love tonight's game because it's going to be a grinder. It's going to be the kind of game where you look at it and say, all right, this team is grinding one out, meaning Houston, and they're going to force the other team, meaning Florida, to grind one out. So I don't expect it to be a high-scoring game. The Pirates over the weekend, I know they salvaged a game against the Yankees yesterday, and that's, I guess, a good thing. But the reality of this is this. Even yesterday, their bullpen blew it. Their bullpen has been bad. Their bullpen is not good enough. Their lineup is probably not good enough. And they aren't very good defensively. Other than that, everything seems to be pretty good. And I think that one of the things that's really frustrating is it didn't have to be this way. Like, if they had made just a couple of moves in the offseason, they would be in a better place. And I know people are talking about how, well, they did sign a first baseman. Yeah, they got a guy kind of off the scrap heap who had wrist injury and all that other stuff. So, I feel like, they knew what they were getting. And it wasn't going to work out. It wasn't destined to work out at all. And I think that's the key, to be honest. That's the key to me. They knew what they were getting. They didn't address it. They didn't address it the way they needed to be addressed. And so when you look at it, we're basically talking about a situation of where the Pirates aren't good enough because they didn't do the things they needed to do in the offseason to get better. Period. I know there are some people that say, well then why are we doing the why do you go and buy tickets to Bob Nutting and all that other stuff? I guess the biggest thing to me is it's because you like baseball. You love baseball. But he clearly didn't do what he needed to do this offseason in order to get better. And I think that really, really, really was resonated this weekend when you watch them against the Yankees. Two of the games, the Yankees just basically pounded them. And then even in yesterday, getaway day it's generally hard to sweep a team. But the Yankees actually took advantage of the Pirates bullpen to tie the game late. And I think that's where they went. And that was good. It was really good to see that. And I think that's the thing about it, that because it just sort of solidified what I think, which is the Pirates bullpen is terrible. And they needed to make it better, and they need to go make it better. And now we've got a couple more guys hurt. Nick Gonzalez has been hurt, obviously. Triolo's hurt. They called up a young kid today to play shortstop. I'm not sure why some of these other guys, they won't call some of their other guys up, but whatever. The reality is now you've got it to a point where you got it to a point now where I don't even know some of these guys on the roster, don't even know what they're going to bring, but we'll see. Paul Skeens on the mound tonight. Obviously, Paul Skeens makes it all better, right? For one night, I think every time Paul Skeens pitches, people get excited. I would expect that he's going to sell a lot of tickets. But to me, it's going to be it's got to be more than Paul Skeens. You can't, just have, because at the end of the day with their bullpen, he could go out and pitch 7 great innings and lose the game 3-1 because the bullpen blows it. It's got to be a situation where more and more and more and more and more these other guys, these other starters, but also these bullpen members, they're all able to do it. And none of them seem to be. So that is a problem, if you ask me. I think that, as we transition here, and by the way, game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. And, of course, like I said, if you want to watch the national championship game tonight, I will be there. at Archie's to watch it with you. The hearing in California about the revenue sharing is going on as we speak for college athletics, and it's very clear, and I'll have more on this tomorrow, but it's very clear to me that there is sort of an undercurrent of this judge and everybody that is, basically in the legal world, that some of the stuff that was going to be a part of this settlement is not going to work. Once again, the NCAA had a bunch of really good legal minds, and everybody else and compliance people and college presidents got together to come up with this revenue sharing idea and all of the stuff that goes around it. And nobody, it seems like, as usual, nobody sat down and said, okay, where are the areas that we're going to get challenged at? And so there's going to be lawsuits if this were to go through. There was going to be lawsuits, which is why there's another delay in officially approving it. What lawsuits? Well, let's count them. Number one, part of this settlement is a cap on the number of players on teams, right? So for football, 105. Well, I think Pitt has 119 or 120 guys, which means the coaches were going to have to sit down with 14, 15 guys and say, hey, time for you to get on with your life's work. So sorry, but that's the reality. Judge says, probably not going to fly. The best way to do that is to grandfather it in. Anybody that's on a roster now, you can remain on the roster till the end, grandfather it in, say 3 years out. It can, then 3 years from now, you can have 105 cap, but you can't do it right now. Probably going to be a legal challenge. So she's questioning that, the judge I'm talking about, questioning the salary cap, which I never thought we'd talk about the salary cap when it comes to college athletics, but allegedly the revenue share is going to be 14 to 21 or $22 million. In essence, it's a salary floor and a salary cap. Her thing is it wasn't collectively bargained. It's going to be challenged. There's also going to be a challenge to the cap on NILs they're trying to put, as well as the fair market value auditing they want to do of NILs. There's going to be Title IX challenges because there's no provision for, hey, we're going to give you $21 million for your payroll. How are you splitting it up between football, basketball, men's this, men's that, women's this, women's that? How are you going to do it? There's no provisions. So theoretically, a team could say, we're going to spend all $21 million on our football team, period. The hell with everything else. There's no provisions for that. So, in other words, it's yet another example of how the NCAA is really, really, really short-sighted and run by, in many ways, a bunch of buffoons. Because how could they not see that these are going to be problematic? It's just the same arrogance that led us to here, period. You know what I mean? Period. The same arrogance that they had has led us to where we're at. They're still not learning their lesson. And so a judge is basically giving them the smackdown. At any rate, tomorrow, hopefully we'll have some good news about Paul Zeise pitching really well. We can talk about that. Maybe we'll finally have the Aaron Rodgers thing, although it sounds like it's Wednesday when it's going to happen. We'll talk a little bit more about the NFL draft. And as we lead up to the draft, we're going to talk more and more and more. We'll try and talk about the draft. We've got a number of things planned. So pay attention and enjoy your day. In the meantime, if you want to have a pop and watch the game at Archie's, I'll be there.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.